Right, let's take you back to that conversation with Professor Siphamandla Zondi, and it's all got to do with South Africa raising its hand as a possible mediator in the conflict between Israel and Palestine. Professor, thank you very much. We've got you back. Hopefully technology is not going to fail us this time. So you've already spoken somewhat around Madiba taking office and immediately dealing with this as almost the first order of business on the table for him when he took office in 1994. But I'm told, Professor, as I read here, that the Spear Peace Initiative, this was now the effort under former President Thabo Mbeki in 2002, which Professor Greenstein says stood out as the most significant effort by South Africa to try and resolve this conflict between Israel and Palestine. What is it about that 2002 effort that stood out?
Thank you very much. In truth is that the efforts earlier by President Mandela were very high level and were an attempt to leverage on the personal relations with the Prime Minister of Israel and the head of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, Yasser Arafat at the time. But the effort that would then be made in the early 2000s under President Mbeki will be more institutionalized. It would be like the whole of government being mobilized, appointing envoys, meeting various actors across the Middle East to try and create conditions towards a peaceful settlement of this conflict.
Yeah.
And the recently passed Aziz Pahad, may so rest in peace, was very critical in that. But again, neither of those worked, simply because in mediation, you aren't able to get ahead until the parties believe and commit to a peace process. So it must head being in a stalemate for the parties to really make bold steps to go forward.
Yeah.
There wasn't a readiness to make bold steps that could move the process forward. But I also think that the United States has not been ready to, as an ultimate guarantor of this and the most influential force on both parties right now, to really bring about a peaceful settlement on just terms.
We're going to talk in a moment, hopefully, about why that is on the part of the U.S. You believe that they're not ready to bring that to fruition. But let's conclude with South Africa first. Do you think that this country, as President Ramaphosa sought to affirm a few days ago, that South Africa stands ready to help out in mediation efforts, do you think that South Africa still carries that stature of being possibly relied upon as a mediator in this conflict?
South Africa has the commitment, consistent commitment to peaceful settlement of conflicts, and has an experience in its own history and its own involvement, especially on the African continent. But I don't think it has the capacity to really bring about a settlement in this particular case for at least two reasons.
Yeah.
One, it does not have significant influence on regional actors and global actors that are involved in this conflict that you need to bring on board, use your capacity to do that. It doesn't quite have that capacity. Secondly, its relationship with Israel has deteriorated over a long period of time to a point where it cannot actually exercise influence on the two primary actors in this particular case. I am not quite sure if South Africa has maintained some sort of dialogue and engagement with Hamas itself now. I know that with PLO, yes, but with Hamas itself, I don't know whether it has built enough confidence to be able to do that. And of course, add to this that South Africa's relationship with the key actors in this environment, especially the United States and the West, have also declined and became hostile. And all of those factors militate up against our ability to successfully mediate this. But to aim to push for peace negotiation, aim to find a peaceful settlement of this conflict is a wise and a noble view, perhaps as part of a quartet of a group of other countries that must bring other influences that we do not have.
There is the other view, Professor, that suggests that South Africa has become partisan, favoring Palestine, much to the annoyance of Israel. Do you carry the same view?
There isn't much that has changed since 1994. South Africa has always strongly supported the Palestinian right to self-determination, the right to their own state as enshrined in the UN Charter. But what has changed is that it has done, in the past it did so, especially under Mandela and under Mbeki, on the basis that it also had a close relationship with Israel that it could use to influence Israel.
Yeah.
But what has happened is that the relationship with Israel has declined significantly and almost got to hostile. And then which creates an impression that South Africa is tilted. There is where it is, but it has not maintained its relationship with Israel to be able to exercise influence on both sides towards a peaceful settlement, and that's what has changed in my view.
Let's then come to that final question about the United States. The humanitarian situation on the ground, particularly in Gaza, it's horrific. Egypt is refusing to open its borders to Palestinian refugees who are fleeing the war. Why is it that the United States does not seem to be at least advocating for peace? Instead, they are sending weaponry to assist Israel.
The United States is one of those global powers that is produced by war. It is a product of war. And war is part of its mentality and its projection of power. It does believe in military solutions a lot more than we believe in peaceful solutions. And in this particular case, it has decided that it will fully and wholly and uncritically side with Israel, even as Israel pounds civilian buildings and leads to killing of over 1,000 people. The United States has simply decided that it will stand with its ally, and that's the position that the United States has taken. Generally, with the Democratic Party in the United States, they would take that position, partly for domestic purposes, to win the critical votes in the United States, but partly because it helps them project their power globally.
Yeah.
So it's not about values, it's not about building a peaceful world and all the things that people wish it could be. It's really about what is in the U.S.'s narrow national interest. And nothing about the world, nothing about the Middle East itself, but it is about what the United States has for itself, even if that costs thousands of lives, so be it.
That's very interesting indeed, given that this is the same country that purports to export democratic values to the world. Let's conclude with this question, Professor. The United Nations is the world body that the international community looks to, particularly when it comes to the humanitarian effort, trying to make sure that people are not necessarily affected by the war. Does it carry weight, the voice of this institution, or has it really become a lapdog or a toothless organization?
The United Nations, in this period of the rise of geopolitics of us against them, in the emergence of the Cold War, which might be called Cold War II, which we have right now. There's huge divisions in the Security Council and huge divisions in global opinions. The United Nations has become weakened by all of that. It has been challenged to find innovative ways to stay relevant and stay influential and good amidst these huge divisions. The world is really being pulled asunder, and the United Nations is meant to keep it all together. And the United Nations is struggling with this. And you can see how it responds to the Ukraine issue. It becomes moribund, and how it now responding to the Palestine issue. It's a very simple case. You condemn the civilian attacks by Hamas, but you then also condemn the collective brutal punishment of civilians by Israel. And then you then call for peaceful settlement, and then you send your envoys. And the United Nations has not been very energetic under Guterres, partly because I think he's a European. He has a little bit of a difficulty being completely objective and looking after the true global interest and showing some energy to get things done. And it's a sad thing, because the United Nations is all that we have when all these vultures and all these hyenas fight against each other. It is the United Nations that secures the interest of the rest of us.
Very interesting indeed. Professor Siphamandla Zondi, thank you very much for your time, giving us his analysis of the situation playing out in the Middle East.